Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I am joined by the man who taught Sebastian Giovinco how to hit a free kick. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. He's really doing it much better than I ever thought he would be doing it, but yeah, well done to him.
The apprentice has become the master.
Yeah, I feel like that happened as soon as he was born.
Yeah. I've just realised possibly someone like Del Piero taught Giovinco how to hit a free kick.
Yeah, he's probably better than me. You heard it here first. Breaking news.
So we are here to talk a little MLS playoffs, right? We watched New York Red Bulls host Toronto FC. It finished, if you don't know, spoiler alert, 2-1 away win for Toronto with that free kick.
Seems like a lot of people in the New York, New Jersey area didn't know, since that stadium remained
empty, right?
fairly empty. Yeah,
I'm done making excuses for half-empty playoff stadiums. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not happy about it.
Fair.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna pay attention to the goals from that game later in today's show. Though we have some really, really good listener questions. Some about sort of. One at least, why should we watch the World Cup? Mm-hmm. So that'll be a big thing to get into.
And I promise the answer will be longer than because it's the World Cup.
That is one of the answers, though, right?
Yes, the chief answer.
And we're also going to talk about the future of the US men's national team. I know we've done that a lot lately, but we've got a question that gets into something very specific about the pros and cons of picking younger players.
And the answer will be more than just Tyler Adams?
Okay. Well, we're going to talk Tyler Adams today. So we watched New York, Toronto.
We did.
In the studio here. We had a brief interlude where we talked to the guys from the American Outlaws.
Yeah.
They are relaunching their podcast, and we're going to be on it. So take a look for American Outlaws wherever you get your podcast.
That works.
So we went back and rewatched what we missed on the DVR. I've got to say, I thought I was the most pro Tyler Adams member of the Total Soccer Show team, but you were super into Tyler Adams during this game.
No, it's always been me. I thought you didn't like Tyler Adams. I'm pretty sure I've always been the one who... No, yeah, absolutely. No, I think you've definitely been more excited about him than I have. Watching him tonight, I mean, not that I haven't been pumped about him. It's just not been to the degree that you are. I think I'm at that point now.
But I do feel like I've been driving a train and someone's just come and nudge me out of the way and taking the wheel.
I feel like we tend to take opposition views when it comes to the hype train on the Total Soccer Show. If one of us has taken up that driver's seat, the other one tends to stand on the tracks.
So one's like, more coal, the other one's like, no, more brakes.
Yeah. So in this situation, I think we're both kind of on the same page here. Famously, you still don't think Christian Pulisic is very good, right? Hello, new listeners. That's not true. But yes, I'm definitely with you because I think he was probably the bright spot for New York Red Bulls this evening.
A lot of the thing you kept noticing, and I didn't notice it, but you did, is always whenever, because he played right wing back, but New York ended in kind of a back five quite a lot. But as soon as an attack was sprung, he was super fast getting involved.
I mean, he makes the decision and goes with it, and I feel like that in and of itself is commendable, that he kind of sticks to the decision, he makes it early, but it tends to be the right decision. And it does kind of remind me, not to get too hypey here, but it reminds me of Christian Pulisic, just in the sense that we were always kind of, at least in the early days when he was just starting to get minutes with the senior team at Dortmund, it seemed like he was always kind of making this simple, smart decision, and it always seemed to work. And it felt like Tyler Adams, a couple times in this game, he had a few missed kicks. That's going to happen. But it felt like overall his decision-making was on point this evening.
And here's the thing, people will be saying, why have you opened the show talking about Tyler Adams when, one, he didn't have his best game tonight, two, his team lost the first leg of the Eastern Conference semi-final. He said, just checking he got the right thing. It was the quarterfinal. It was the MLS playoffs quarterfinal. I refuse to cede that ever. But I think, if anything, it's more interesting to talk about a player. Don't get sidetracked. I see that look on your face.
Oh, you do know that people hang that banner, right? Eastern Conference champion?
Yeah, I do.
That is a banner.
I do.
It's called the consolation prize.
And people celebrate getting to the MLS Cup by being Eastern. Yeah, I'm just not on board with it. You either win the title or you don't.
Fair.
All right. So anyway, I think it's important to watch players that you're sort of invested in and interested in. It's important to watch them in their sort of non-highlighty games.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's when you really see who they are and what they're about.
Yeah. I mean, and we saw a lot of good things from Tyler Adams tonight. I think probably more than we saw from a lot of other Red Bulls players.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think, again, it does go to the decision-making because a lot of the times it seemed like he was making a smart run, making a smart pass, and it felt like a lot of his teammates, by contrast, were occasionally making smart decisions, but then a lot of times we're making questionable decisions.
All right, well, that brings us then. We're going to do this goal by goal.
Sure.
Okay, so the first goal is early, right? It's the 8th minute, Toronto score. And it all starts with a New York Red Bulls throw-in, and Perenelle makes a bizarre decision. This is the left centre-back for New York Red Bulls. When he did this, I could not believe he did it.
It's bizarre when you first see it because it's basically he checks down the line, chooses not to throw it down. Instead, I think tries to do sort of like a no-look throw to the middle of the field to
Murillo.
Long. Oh, is it to Murillo?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's not good.
Who's the right centre-back? Because Long is marked up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Murillo's all
That's
the
why
way.
it's not good.
I mean, he's kind of central because he's pulled in from the right. Yeah.
But you're still basically, he tries to do a no-look throw in into the middle of the field, which is something that if a 10-year-old did, their coach would be very frustrated.
Yeah.
And Jesse Marsh is probably pretty frustrated because basically from that point on, it is consistently we're flying through the air right now. This is not good. And you can see it that everyone from that point, because basically that throw immediately puts Murillo under pressure.
Yep.
Toronto do have a couple of numbers forward.
Yeah.
But once that throw happens, they're like, everybody, swarm? And it works.
They're all like, pressing trigger? Yeah, pressing trigger.
And
Let's
so
go.
it's basically like you can just see that sort of, it's almost like a hot potato of who's going to make the final mistake, because it's like, not me, I'm going to pass it off.
Yeah.
Not me, I'm going to pass it off.
So-
and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse until Felipe, I think, turns it over, right?
Yeah, I've got this in my head because we've watched it so many times, but Murillo does like a panicky but just gets himself out of trouble header to Long. Long does a quite nice like clip pass back out to Perrinel, but he's under pressure when he does it. Like everyone's just getting away with it, right?
Yep.
And then Perrinel lifts it over the head of Marky Delgado and he's like, yes, I'm the man, I did this. And then Delgado just comes back around the other side. He's like, nope, gets his foot in the way. And the pass that Perrinel tries to play to Felipe breaks loose. Felipe gets there but under pressure, right?
Yes, and I think also, again, it's sort of the Red Bulls trying to be just they're overcomplicating things. That in this situation, Felipe, I forget who he has. I think it's Davis. I think it's Sean Davis. He has as like, he could maybe split the two TFC players if he plays that first time ball.
That's what he's trying to do. I see Davis pointing to his feet asking for it.
But then, well, you say he's trying to, but Felipe takes a touch that he doesn't need to take, and to me it indicates that he's going to try to dribble through those two and launch the counterattack himself. But in so doing, he dribbles straight into a player and gets dispossessed, and now you have three of your midfielders in a 3-6-1 way out of the play, and now you're in a lot of trouble.
And then away Toronto FC goes. I think, doesn't Altidore do the this way, that way?
He sure does.
On Perrinel, I believe.
Sure does.
Oh, we got a couple of emails after I mentioned the this way, that way recently. Apparently a lot of kids call it around the cow.
That makes sense.
I don't know why, but that's what
to
they call
humiliate
it.
the person that you're doing it to because you're comparing them to a cow?
Or maybe cows are so big you have to step all the way around them.
That could be.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, though, it is sort of an insult to the defender, if I were guessing.
But that's what Josie does anyway. He puts it one side of Perrinel, though, goes around the other side, receives the ball, puts it. Does he put in a low cross or is it a shot?
Does.
It's a shot slash
I'm going to
cross,
say,
right?
I think it's a cross. I think it's an instep. He's trying to do that sort of like corridor of uncertainty, ball into the box.
That's true.
Hits it a little too close. It's still a good ball. It's whipped in there. It's probably a little too close to Robles because Robles gets a hand to it, but not the way he would have liked, because basically he kind of pushes it back to the penalty spot, and then we have a goal.
Yeah, Vasquez is there to pick it up. And he does that weird finish where it looks like he doesn't have time to turn around and open his hips up, and then somehow he does. I don't know how he did that.
Yeah, this was not a great evening for Luis Robles, because I would say even that initial save from the Altidore cross, like, it's challenging because it's whipped in there, it's low, it's bouncing. But you got to parry that away. You don't parry that to the dead center of the 18-yard box, and then you certainly don't sort of like hop back up and stay rooted to the ground. Because to your point, Vasquez takes a touch and then kind of falling away, momentum leading to the left, puts it into the far right side netting.
It's really impressive.
And he hits it with the instep. Does not put that much power behind it. So I think it's basically Robles trying to scramble to react, and he gets his feet set. And as he's getting his feet set, the shot is being taken. So now while he's getting set, he then has to relaunch and try to get momentum to the left. Can't do it. Ball's in the back of the net. 1-0 TFC.
1-0 early on. New York Red Bulls tie it up just before half-time, right? It's, time is really running out as they win
1
this
minute at a
penalty
time.
kick.
I believe it was 45-54 is when the referee points to the spot.
All right. You made good notes. Actually, you didn't even look at your notes. You just got a good memory.
I just remember that one because I think I said
Still
that
trap.
already. Yeah, because we were trying to find where it was.
I see.
And also, yes, still trap.
So great penalty from Roya, right? Roof of the net. Not a Panenka. It's kind of like a clip. Like he clips it into the top.
I think, and it really helps me that we went back and I think somebody asked us what is a Panenka? Like, how do you define a Panenka? And what we ended on is that there's not much of a follow through, and it's an attempt to deceive in the run up is the key point.
You got to
there.
fake like you're going to hit it hard, and then you just gently chip it. That's what I call a Panenka.
And Royer,
that's not what Royer did.
He does like a stutter step, then runs up, and then doesn't really follow through, but he still hits it with the laces with power, I would say. So it has backspin, but it doesn't have that insulting slowness that a Panenka has.
But it still counts for one, same as a Panenka.
Yep.
It's 1-1. I do want to talk about the build-up, the two passes before. Is it Bradley Wright Phillips is brought down to win the penalty kick?
It's the hardest thing about being a professional to what you're about to talk about.
Well, it's what I want to say is, even though this ends with New York Red Bulls winning a penalty kick, it was kind of an example of everything that New York Red Bulls did wrong in this game. Because you could say that Royer passes to Kleshton lays it off to Bradley Wright-Phillips. Bradley Wright-Phillips dribbles in the box, and Drew Moore brings him down. But that's not really what happened, is it?
And this is what I mean when I say this is probably one of the worst things about being a professional. If we're playing at amateur level and we do that passing sequence, we absolutely are like, oh no, I totally meant to make that pass. Absolutely, that was the through ball that he was obviously running onto. We all knew what was happening. And you watch it, it's definitely a series of scuffed passes and sort of half-missed chances that somehow end in a foul and a penalty.
Let me walk you through it.
Sure.
Royer is looking for Bradley Wright-Phillips.
I want to say, sorry, I do want you to walk me through it. I just want to add for listeners that we were both like, what a great passing sequence. We were like, oh, that's such a deft touch.
Yeah,
and it looked really good. And then we watched it and we were like, ooh.
So Royer does that poke pass. He's definitely looking for the feet of Bradley Wright-Phillips. He is off. Sasha Kleshton rescues the situation by stepping in and receiving it. He tries like a clever little outside of the foot, I believe, like reverse type pass to Bradley Wright-Phillips, but doesn't get full contact on the ball.
It's like 95% whiffs it.
Yeah, so I think it's Delgado gets the ball, and then Bradley Wright-Phillips has to tackle Delgado in the box, and then gets brought down by Drew Moore. No passes are connected properly until Bradley Wright-Phillips goes down.
And Delgado's defense wasn't even good. And you asked me, like, what was he trying to do? And all I can think is that he also watched Mikel Antonio not shepherd the ball out and kind of like see out the win. And I wonder if Delgado was like 5 seconds left, checks his wristwatch that he didn't have, and was like, all right, I just got to shield this ball out. We're good. Oh no, I've lost the ball. That's not good.
I might just be thinking about this because we played this in practice recently. You know, when you play 3 touch, so every player only has 3 touches. And the reason you do it is to make people move the ball quickly, right? 3 touches and you move it on. But sometimes people accidentally take 3 touches and are still in possession, and you see them just like dance around the ball and try and protect it. That's what Delgado looked like. He looked like he'd used up his touches, but he's in his own area.
Slight tangent. Bill Simmons has the idea of the Tyson zone, where like anything Mike Tyson does, at like a certain point, basically a person becomes so crazy that like anything they do, you'd be like, yeah, I could imagine that. So if I told you like Mike Tyson's writing an opera, you'd be like, yeah, okay, sure. And I feel like Pep Guardiola has reached that with coaching, where like it would be surprising, but you wouldn't 100% immediately say like that's not happening if Pep Guardiola really did have like a 3-touch rule and the player just had to like leave it after he took 3 touches
in Premier League matches.
Yes, if Nicolas Otamendi just walked away from the ball and it was like, what happened? And afterwards you found that out, you'd be like, yeah, okay, that doesn't surprise me.
They could start doing that after they're 4-0 up, maybe.
Yeah, and probably do. But in this situation, it doesn't work very well because it leads to, I think it's Drew Moore that has to try to come back to make a play and instead makes that contact with Bradley Wright-Phillips, concedes the penalty.
We're saying, apart from that moment, I thought Mikey Delgado was really good. He's heavily involved in Toronto's first goal. Like I said, he gets that tackle in on Perenel before he plays. And I think he also, once Felipe turns the ball over, I think Delgado's involved with a clever... He may be the one that lays it off to Altidore to begin the sort of big counter-attack. So thumbs up, Mikey Delgado. I know we're not doing thumbs up, thumbs down, but thumbs up anyway.
And to that, I feel like for Toronto, this was a little bit like a blood in the water game, where it was like as soon as they saw the blood, they're like, everybody go. And Marco
Toronto
Delgado,
are the shark team of Major League Soccer.
There we go.
Reference Man City.
But Delgado's a good sort of like barometer for that, because even in that like sequence where they get the ball back leads to the first goal for Toronto, it is sort of him being like, oh, there it is, and then like chasing the guy down and harassing him and then forcing a bad pass again.
And here's the thing: what ties together for me, New York Red Bulls conceding the first goal, and weirdly New York Red Bulls scoring their equaliser, is they're trying to force passes through the middle. Right? Yeah. Felipe was trying to force that pass when it got turned over, and Toronto scored. And also, Royer and then Kleshton were both trying to force a pass that wasn't properly on, and they kind of just got lucky. And I think that was the story of this game for me, is Red Bulls trying to force passes through the middle when the wide option was actually on many, many, many times.
And I should give credit to Matt Doyle for making this point, but I'm going to give you credit for telling me about Matt Doyle making the point, which is that we have
Matt Doyle gets the MLS assist on his own point.
Correct. Because like I think a lot of times, especially before we started paying closer attention to Major League Soccer, we thought of Sasha Kleshton, we'd watch the highlight reels and it would be like, oh, what an amazing through ball. Oh, he split 4 people there. Oh, that's incredible. And I think Doyle's point was like, yes, but he tries that a lot, and it doesn't always come off. And this game was a great example that he had a few that were those kind of Marco Echeverri, that ball had eyes moments. But then there were a lot of trying to like just split 2 defenders and instead hitting it right into the center back, or hitting a ball out of bounds, or hitting a chipped ball over the top to nobody.
There was a lot of trying to chip it forwards for Bradley Wright-Phillips to run onto behind Toronto's defense, and that didn't really work out either.
Yeah, and I would even say, like, for all of the good moments Sasha Kleshton had, I think you made this point off air, that he was also sort of maybe what was wrong with New York, in that it seemed like he kept trying to play sort of direct, or kept trying to move the ball through the middle quickly.
That's what I'm talking about.
And there was a lot of moments where he had tons of space out wide, specifically with Tyler Adams, who made really good runs.
Did we just want him to pass to Tyler Adams? Is
Probably.
that part of it?
Probably, but I think it's because that run was there, because he made that smart run. And I think we both like to see really smart run into space, could lead to something, reward that run.
Yeah.
Don't try to force the through ball through.
Oh, okay, so I want to get to the winning goal.
Sure.
Which, Giovinco scores, right? But on second and third watch, we noticed Murillo.
We did.
And I still have the question, what was Murillo doing?
Oh, that's your question? Because you remember the first thing you screamed out that was a question? How is he going to the World Cup? Is what you actually yelled as soon as you saw that. And then we were both sad for a moment, and then we laughed as we saw the highlight, or the replay, rather.
Oh, I don't know what to say.
So it's a free kick that Giovinco earns.
Sorry. We should connect this properly.
Yeah.
We hadn't planned this out, but this all very much connects. It's a Sacha Kljestan loose pass that leads to the Toronto turnover that they win this Giovinco free kick on. And I hate piling on Sacha Kljestan because they were having a nice passing moment, and then it was just like a loose pass from him looking for somebody that didn't quite get there. Toronto away.
He was trying to do a one-touch sort of like reverse pass, almost kind of no look, but basically like he was facing straight. He was trying to play it like to his left side with his right foot without really looking, and he plays it behind the runner into the path of Toronto.
I don't know why I have such guilt here. I feel like I'm piling on Sacha Kljestan when I'm genuinely a big fan, like especially when he scores or when he assists. It's always amazing. But I think maybe if you're a New York fan, you're seeing the downside of what that looks like.
I think it's because we like him. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is like we have certain players that you and I think, like for a variety of different reasons. I think he's one of those. And so we want to see him do well. We want to see him succeed. We're definitely not Red Bulls fans, but we always kind of root for the players we like. He's one. And so to see him have an off night, it maybe, again, is that sort of like, ooh, maybe there's some work to be done from a couple different U.S. players. And so in this situation, it then leads to the break. It leads to Giovinco getting fouled.
It leads to the Josie knocking Aaron Long over.
Gracious.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
I mean, that really looked like a 50-50 ball, but I think after the collision was made, it was an 80-20 ball.
And Josie had some frustrating moments on the night where it felt like maybe he could have put in a little more effort, or he stopped complaining to the referee instead of chasing down loose balls.
You mean when he could have followed up, but instead he was appealing? Yeah, I remember that.
There's a couple of those where it felt like, just focus, man. Keep your head in the game. And I firmly believe...
Well, he did here. He was very focused.
True. But I firmly believe that feeling for me is 100% born of that Trinidad game.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of like, if we'd qualified for the World Cup and that had been fine, I wouldn't have that feeling. But now, because I felt like a lot of the U.S. players in that game were sort of focused on other things and not 100% into the game, when I see that happen now, I'm sort of like, no, don't do that again. Stop it. Focus. But in this situation, good physical battle that he absolutely wins.
Yeah, he does. And fairly, I think, because I would argue Long gives up on the ball slightly and tries to sort of step into Altidore, and that was the mistake.
Yeah. Not going to win that one, I don't think. I think he also kind of overruns the ball, so he's sort of trying to slow down and reach back to get it, and Josie just says, like, no, I don't think so.
That leads to Giovinco being fouled, top of the box, steps up, strikes the free kick that he won. But then, to get back to Murillo breaks out of his position, which was just outside of the wall, and tries to track the ball in the air and get ahead to it. But in doing so, I'm 100% convinced he obstructs Luis Robles' view. And that's why when you see Robles dive, he's nowhere near the ball in the end. But Murillo's in his line of sight and interfering with his vision of the ball.
And this is where I want to say the utmost professional in this game was Brad Friedel. And that's because you and I have done play-by-play, color commentary, respectively. And there are times when you'll be like, what was he thinking there? Or we'll try to break down a goal, and I'll be like, I have no idea what he was doing. And I think Brad Friedel had that moment. He just didn't box himself into a corner where he had to say, I have no idea what Murillo's doing here. But he was sort of like, well, you question the footwork, and there's some interesting decisions being made, but in the end, it's a goal. Like, he really, I think he had no idea. I think they said maybe it was a designed defensive play to have Murillo drop in and cover the near post.
They thought maybe he was trying to get to the post. But it didn't look like that to me. It looked like he just decided to try and track the ball in the air and head it. And I think, this is my theory, I may be proved wrong by the time this podcast is published, but Robles doesn't yell at Murillo at all. Afterwards, he just looks disappointed. And I wonder if New York Red Bulls... Jesse Marsch is a planner, right, from what I understand. If New York Red Bulls had planned for defending Sebastian Giovinco free kicks, and maybe one of the things they came up with was, we'll have a guy sort of at the last minute drop and defend it with a header, rather than sort of just assuming that Giovinco's going to beat our wall because he's that good. He's going to put it top corner because he's that good. And then we just have to hope the goalkeeper can get to it. Instead, we're going to try this weird thing where we have sort of where we intercept the intercontinental ballistic missile. We shoot it down and the missile's missed.
Yeah. And I feel like both of those are equally likely to have success.
Yeah, right.
because I guess then if you want to look into it, like what the idea behind that plan would be, it's a free kick from maybe 25 yards out, which is an ideal shooting range, but it is still like far enough away that you could theoretically go for like a little chipped ball back across to maybe the 6-yard box. Somebody runs on, heads it in. So you can't afford to just have a person standing on the post because now you're keeping everybody on side.
True.
So I think the idea is as he's running up, basically Murillo is supposed to sprint back to that near post.
Oh, so maybe Friedel was right. He was just trying to like be on the post, but not be on the post as Giovinco strikes it.
It's possible, but I would say then if you watch it, Murillo, like, he's in a hurry, but he's not in the hurry that you should be in if that's the plan. Because he sort of, by the end, is sort of casually, like, jumping backwards, and if anything, is just completely obstructing Robles.
Maybe he took off too late.
Yeah, I think
so
he did.
Then you realise, they've already taken it. I'm going to have to just, like, launch myself at it. And there's no way he's getting to it.
Actually, I think, and this is a risky thing to say, given that this is kind of from memory, but I think actually he leaves too early. And so then he tries to slow down, and I think that's part of the problem, is that it's not as soon as Giovinco starts that run-up, you're making a beeline as fast as you can. I think he leaves too early and then slows up and is like, oh no, I've kept everybody on side. Now I'll go. And in that delay, when you stop-start, it's just like a goalkeeper. It's going to cause problems.
Okay, so after the game, Jesse Marsh says he thought his team was timid, which I think is part of it, right? It wasn't the Red Bulls pressing, sort of winning the ball back high all the time thing that we saw. We also got a question from a New York Red Bulls fan, Ira Jersey. He tweeted this at us. Is the second leg even worth watching?
I mean, yes, because things can always happen. But I understand why, especially if you're a Red Bulls fan, you would have some concern. So the concern would be that you conceded 2 away goals and you have a 1-goal deficit, and now you're going to Toronto against probably the best team, I mean, definitely the best team in Major League Soccer this year. But I would argue a 1-goal deficit, you're always still in it, right? You're definitely going to watch. And to be fair, Ira Jersey's question was, as a neutral, obviously he's going to watch because he's a New York fan. But it's not a 1-goal deficit. That's the problem.
Yeah,
if you win 1-0, that's not enough.
But if you win 3-2...
well, then it's enough.
It's a 1-goal
but
deficit.
I think the issue then is that basically you have to. Again, this is a team that more or less came out in a 3-6-1. If you want to go 3-5-1-1, you can. But now they basically have to go on the road to a team that are very good, and they have to go at that team and try to get goals. And what that obviously leads to is vulnerability on the counter. Sebastian Giovinco and Josie Altidore more than capable of capitalizing on that.
And don't forget Vasquez.
Also him.
I would say, weirdly, as a neutral, it makes the game more worth watching because we know there's one team has to risk it all and one team that's capable of exploiting it. I'm going to turn on that game, next week?
Yep.
And I'm pretty confident I'm going to see some goals.
Well,
right?
I would say this.
What.
I think there's a chance that it's a really captivating game. We've seen that before where a team really has to go and try to get something, and they have. Sometimes they don't, but either way, it can be interesting. What will make me probably stop paying attention until we watch the highlights to
Early
recap
Toronto goal?
is if Toronto scores in the first 5 minutes. Yeah.
I think that's correct, but we're going to watch anyway, right?
Sure.
One guy we didn't mention, I don't want to move on without mentioning him, Michael Bradley.
Yeah.
I feel like this was a very...
He was there.
But it was a non-flashy but very effective performance. I saw him winning a lot of balls in midfield in the way that I kind of wish he had done against Trinidad, and just being really effective with his distribution.
All right, if you don't like Michael Bradley, just put your fingers in your ears or pull the earbuds out for 30 seconds.
Or maybe skip 30 seconds ahead.
But yeah, that too. But going back to us watching U.S. games, doing the quick take, rewatching them, and then kind of getting a more in-depth view of what happened.
Yeah.
My guess is going to be that if you go back and watch this, part of the reason why New York had such problems playing through the middle was Michael Bradley. Because you're absolutely right that we saw him making a lot of either timely interceptions or timely little just poke tackles where there was no foul conceded, but he wins the ball, he triggers the counter, or he triggers TFC getting possession back. And I do think it was probably a good defensive game from him, if not offensive.
There we go. All right, so we have... listener questions later in today's show. We can't review Houston-Portland because we haven't seen it. We hit record after we watched the New York-Toronto game, so we don't know what happened in that game. We'll maybe touch on that later in the week if anything happened.
That'll work for me.
Before we move on to questions, today's show is sponsored by Blue Apron. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, even Taylor Rockwell.
Thank you for that, my friend. Again, I feel like that's a shot at my overall baking ability and my general cooking ability. I've learned also that extends to home improvement projects where my wife tends to be like, Is that one thing supposed to look like that? Always one mistake. Always one mistake in all my cooking, except with the Blue Apron, because it's tough when they have step-by-step instructions and pictures. It's really tough to mess it up.
Has your wife ever asked, is that supposed to look like that after you've made the Blue Apron meal?
No.
Yeah, so there you go.
Because, again, there are pictures of what it's supposed to look like.
I almost wish you would ask so then you could prove, like, yes, here's the photo.
Okay, she has a little more faith in me in my cooking, I promise. But she does like the Blue Apron, and I do too, especially because it makes meal prep very easy. Mm-hmm. And it is that sort of like, it's everything you know about Blue Apron already. The ingredients are there. You don't have to worry about, did I get enough of this? Did I forget to buy that? Did I leave that in the cart? I've definitely done that before. So that's a really nice thing. And then the other obvious component there is that it's, 40 minutes or less to make most of the meals, if not all the meals. And that allows you to, basically, you can cook a meal, have it ready for the start of an MLS playoff game.
Especially if it's not the kickoff time that they said it would be.
Yep.
As was the case tonight.
I had that aha moment on the way here because we were like trying to get to the studio by 7. I think it was like 7:02. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to miss like kickoff. I'm missing minutes. And then I really was like stressing and then was like, oh wait, no. I'll be fine. And I got here and it was still like 12 minutes to kick off. I was like, there we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, the thing I'll say with Blue Apron is they are very honest about the prep time. They'll say it'll take 15 minutes of prep, which means you're chopping and this and that, and then 25 minutes to cook. And I've always been like, you say 15 minutes, but you don't know how fast I am, Blue Apron. And I'll do the chopping, and I'll be like, oh, it's been 15 minutes.
Just deliberately contrarian. Do you chop, slow down your chopping?
You
is
win
that what
again,
it is?
Blue Apron. Which is, everything takes a little longer than you realise, right? But Blue Apron have got it down. Step by step is on point.
Yeah, but I also do mean that I think a lot of times when if I'm going to watch the 2 MLS games at home, it is sort of like, oh, that one starts at 7, I got to walk the dogs. What have I got leftovers? Or maybe I'll order something. You're not always going to make the best food decisions when you've got 2 MLS games to watch. Blue Apron, you can knock that out in 40 minutes. You're good to go.
Is that MLS's fault that you don't make the best food decisions?
No, it's mostly me. And my lack of ability to have a personal chef.
We're talking like a back-to-back game problem. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
It usually leads to pizza.
Well, if you would like to check out this week's menu for Blue Apron and get $30 off your first meal with free shipping, you go to blueapron.com/TSS. The TSS stands for Total Soccer Show.
Good stuff.
Blueapron.com/TSS.
That was the thing that was throwing people off. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait.
It's blueapron.com/TSS. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
Thank you to Blue Apron for sponsoring today's show. Joe Grove, thank you for talking about Blue Apron with me and talking MLS playoffs.
I did just do that.
Now let's move away from MLS playoffs and into general MLS chat.
So, we have 4 listener questions. We have, to give you a little preview, we have one about the colour of cleats. We have one about watching the World Cup next summer. And we have a question about young players on the US men's national team. But the first question is from Scott Ely. Scott says, I love MLS and I watch a lot. Okay, so he's not anti-MLS. We've got that established. Scott says, but sometimes I cringe at how subpar it is compared to top European leagues.
Interjection? Is this a Ned Stark moment? Forget everything that came before the butt?
No, I think the butt is just making clear that he's not. Scott's not one of those Europe only MLS sucks kind of guys, right? It's like an honest assessment from a person who watches MLS. All right. Okay. Yeah, Ned Stark's not always right. So let's have that down.
I think that's been very, very clearly proven.
Possible spoiler alert?
We'll leave it at that.
If you're not watching by now, then it's probably too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott continues. When I watch individual MLS players, they mostly seem on par in terms of individual skills, not Messi, etc., but on par with the average players in those European leagues. I'm not 100% sure I agree with that, but we'll let that slide for now. Scott says, I think the off-the-ball behaviour is the big difference. A lot of guys just standing around seeming uninterested. Their off-the-ball torpor, that's a good word, is, I think, what makes the league in general seem lesser. Do you guys agree or disagree?
I agree and disagree.
Perfect.
And I would say that I disagree because think back to the conversation we had yesterday during our thumbs up, thumbs down review about Romelu Lukaku. And the reason why he was booed is because so many fans at Old Trafford, or at least some fans at Old Trafford, thought he wasn't moving enough, that he was too static, he was too just standing there waiting for the ball to come. But that can be part of the game plan, and I think it was for Man United.
It was about him closing down angles and doing the smart things that Mourinho had sort of asked him to do.
Yeah. So I don't think movement is always the best way to judge judge a team, but I get what Scott's going for, and I would say that it's more part of the reason why I was watching Tyler Adams tonight and being like very impressed by what he was doing is because it was the decision making. Mm-hmm. It is the
when to move,
exactly.
Yeah.
It is knowing, that play is going to be on. I'm going to be on my horse to get myself into a position where the ball should come, but instead Sasha Kleshtin's going to try to force through a ball for Bradley Wright Phillips. Whereas I did see a lot of players in this game taking an extra half second or an extra second just to really make sure this was the thing they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Now, that might be playoff pressure. We know that's definitely a factor in these games.
Yeah.
But I do see what
Bobby
Scott's getting at.
couldn't tie shoelaces.
There we go. But I see what he's getting at, where like it is sort of like that ball would have been on if you had made that run a half second faster.
Yeah.
But I saw you stop, like kind of think about it for a second before you made the run. Mm-hmm. And if you eliminate that, then I think that quality improves.
Speaking of Bobby Warshaw, this is a thing he and I briefly got into, but I think I accidentally sidetracked us. I'd love to talk to him about it some other time. He talked about how one of his observations was that some of the American player doesn't understand angles as well as like players in Europe, and he felt like he noticed that when he was in Scandinavia, and he thinks that was a thing that Klinsmann talked about with the national team. That was the thing. Wasn't Jermaine Jones talking about that with when he you have to tell certain players, here's how you get open. You need to move here. You need to move there. And like players in European leagues, just for whatever reason, better coaching possibly, just know that stuff.
Yeah, and we've kind of touched upon the point that I'm about to make a couple different times, and it always probably sounds really strange to people who like haven't played much soccer or are kind of new to the game, and it is a weird thing where thinking is not necessarily a thing you want to do in the game.
Yes.
It needs to be sort of instinct or something that's so drilled into you that you know that ball's there, I go here. It's like a semi-pro with Will Ferrell where they like, have you seen that movie before, the basketball one? Do you remember?
Tropic Thunders,
do you remember the play?
No, not Tropic Thunders. Flint Tropics.
Yeah, do you remember the play that they run?
No.
The puke, because they run it so much that it makes them all throw up.
Yes.
It's basically that like you run a play so much, you practice the thing so much that everybody knows exactly how to execute, exactly where to be, so you don't have that half-second hesitation of, am I supposed to? Yes, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so then it slows everything down a little bit more. I think, if you remove that hesitation, it obviously speeds everything up, but it also takes away that inhibition a little bit.
So if we think that there might be something to this with players in Major League Soccer not being so great with the angles and you know spacing and getting open, for example, as players in top European leagues, why is that? How has that come about? Is it too big of a quick? No, I don't know. I'm asking you. I have no idea what the answer is.
No, because I think even what you just said there, those are the symptoms. It's like not quite knowing your angles or not quite knowing your spacing or not quite knowing when to make that run. That's all still not quite knowing. And it's the knowing aspect. It is that I really do think it is.
Is that just being a better player then?
Yes,
like maybe Scott's got the question the wrong way around. Like when he says that they look on par in terms of skill, but not in terms of movement. Maybe it's just that like the movement is a skill essentially, and that because MLS is a lower level than top European leagues. The reason those players are in the top European leagues is because they have the skill of knowing where to be and how to get there.
That's certainly a factor. Yes, there are players who like can do that processing.
You bet to Ned Starkman?
No, not really. No, because I think that's definitely it. That yes, like truly world-class players have that like extra sensory ability or just that little bit more. But I do think, there's the but, I do think that part of it is, and it's
you did a good job trying to hide it.
Thanks. It's an age-old cliche. It's an age-old cliche in American soccer, but also, like, think about the kickers games we've done, for example.
Yeah.
And admittedly, we're about 100 yards away from the fans, but are 10-year-olds watching the game or are 10-year-olds in the bouncy house? Or 10-year-olds running around up top?
They're rolling down the grass bank.
You don't have a lot of kids at a young age, like, watching soccer and processing it that way or playing in that sort of play fast, play quick. You got to get the ball into your feet, turn, play it forward. It's not, you just don't kind of watch it and process it that way, the way I do think a lot of other countries 10-year. I mean, think about yourself, for example. I mean, and I know you didn't. You're not like a professional soccer player, but I'm assuming that you watched games as a kid younger than probably most people in the United States with more intensity at a younger age. Does that make sense?
Maybe, yeah. I think I know what you're saying. And I mean, you see me watch games, right? I'm sort of like, I'm not doing anything else.
Yes, this is very true. But I'm like, when did you first start, like I don't know if it was Wolves or whomever, but when did you first like really start like sitting down and watching games on the weekend?
Honestly, it was England games after Graham Taylor.
Okay.
So when there was Terry Venables took over, so this would be 1994 maybe.
So knowing what I know about you, that would make you 15?
14 or 15, yeah. But so I think I remember watching for the first time a TV show where they sort of broke down why a ball that David Platt had played wasn't a long ball, but it was actually a direct ball. Like it was a long pass, and the reason for doing it.
Yeah.
And something clicked in my head of like, oh, like things mean things. Like, and now you can watch a game and this means this. It's not just he kicked the ball forward and they ran after it. But it took a while for that to click, I think.
Things do mean things, and sometimes they can be two things.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even there, yeah, you're right. So maybe like 10 and 11 is maybe too harsh, but like, yeah, 15-year-old.
I also came to soccer late, so you got to think about that.
Well, I've been playing since I was 5, and I was playing like travel soccer when I was 10, but I don't think I sat down and watched games where I was like, what is this player doing? How is he playing? How is he thinking? It was just much more like, have we scored yet? Oh, that was a good one. It's just kind of like the superficial viewing versus the what is this player doing and why.
That may be it. All right.
And then I think you don't have that like knowledge. So then when you go to play, you're still sort of like, am I going to get to score a goal today? Versus, am I going to be the one to play 2 touch passes through the middle and really confuse the opposition? And it's kind of a different approach from there.
If we can look at this as a national culture type thing, I can say I've played pickup soccer in the United States, like unorganized pickup soccer, and I've played pickup soccer in England. And when I play in England, people roughly the same age, there is a lot more like people getting open and passing and moving the ball around.
Yep.
There's a lot more still in the US of like full-grown adults who just want to play pickup soccer and dribble. And it's about like showing off some skills and just dribbling.
You know, I never actually thought about this in that way, but you're absolutely right, because when I was in Turkey twice a week, we had like the internationals game, and it was all the expats from all over the world, although in most countries you just call them immigrants. But when it's Americans and Brits, they're expats for some reason. Anyway, it was basically...
I've just realized how super superior and terrible that is.
100%. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it was like a lot of Brits, Americans, Italians, Dutch people, Dutchmen? Yes. And Turks as well. But like, yeah, you're absolutely right that it was much more like everybody moving, everybody working off the ball, everybody dropping back, people keeping their shape, people working together. And it wasn't so much of the, we're going to play a 1 defender, 10 attackers formation. That is interesting.
And everyone's instructions are dribble.
Yep. And that was it was consistently the best pickup soccer games I've ever played.
Yeah.
Because it was just always like, 6 people show up, but everybody kind of knows what's expected.
So there you go. We've got to change the national culture, maybe? That's what the big point we're ending on here?
Yes, and not to extend it further, but it is a point that you and Travis talked about, I believe, which is like
on the Top Draw Soccer Show.
A big part of it was also that we were playing in those like kind of like what you have all over, I would say, most of Europe, those little like small fields caged in that you can play anywhere. It means like you've got
from the Nike commercials.
Yeah, but it kind of it keeps the ball in bounds. It allows you to shoot at a goal without putting it through 2 cones and sending it 50 yards long. It kind of keeps the ball moving.
Those are the fields that Target are building around the United States. Did you see that announcement with the US Soccer Foundation?
I did.
I think 220 fields.
And they are awesome. I love those things so much. It's one of the biggest things I miss about living in Turkey.
It's such a smart sponsorship as well, because there's a target that you can hit as well. That's on the side of the field. You can like maybe shoot from the other side and try and hit the target.
You just gave me flashbacks to when the Richmond Kickers had the Target logo on the back of their shorts. Is how I'm going to put that. They had 2 Target logos.
All right, should we move on to the next question?
If we must.
We should thank Scott Ely for, what, if nothing else, a conversation starter.
And since I feel like I just talked a whole bunch, I'll ask you the question. Phil Duquette, can you talk about the pros and cons of moving on exclusively to younger players in future USMNT camps and friendlies? #play your children. He didn't say that. He said play your kids.
I would have gone Phil Doucette. So at least now one of us is right and one of us is wrong. So
probably you. I think you're probably right.
All right. So the pros and cons of playing exclusively younger players. So we'll take the Portugal game as an example. There is a movement for like it to be no one under the age of 25 can be selected. We've got to pick all teenagers. I think there's a danger, and everybody talks about that as building for World Cup 2022, right? As if that's we can put the team together, all these kids can go through it together and like forge as a unit and go forward. I worry that if you get a bunch of kids together, you've essentially selected a youth national team, right? It's as if you get them all together without, say, a Michael Bradley or Josie Altidore or some Jeff Cameron, although that's interesting for all kinds of reasons that we talked about.
Yep.
If you get them together without a senior figure, you may as well just have selected a U20 or a U23 team, and it's not the full senior national team experience, right? So we want Tyler Adams called up to the national team.
Yep.
We want Weston McKennie called up to the national team.
This is true.
But we don't want him called up and then in all the practice sessions and everything to play alongside a bunch of other teenagers, because then he's not stepping up a level. My ideal thing, it's probably not going to work because Bradley's going to be still in MLS playoffs. He's not going to be selected. I would like to see McKennie in camp with Michael Bradley.
Yeah.
And then you can like take a look at him, because you might be thinking, I'm either going to play alongside you, I'm going to take your spot.
Yeah.
You can get the measure of Michael Bradley, and you can learn from him. He can talk to you. He can talk you through things. So I think you lose a lot if you go with only young players, is essentially what I'm saying.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I also feel like something you said in there has made me wonder if maybe my approach to what the United States is doing at this point is completely wrong. Because I've had this idea that the reason why you have Dave Sarek in there is because you kind of maybe like Tab Ramos didn't want the interim job or they didn't quite have stuff figured out, so they've had to say like, oh, we're going to bring in a bunch of youngsters to kind of satisfy people. But now what I wonder is a big problem would be, say if Daryl Grove were named the head coach of U.S. Soccer.
Let's do it.
And you said, I'm going to kind of carry on what was already planned. I'm going to call in all of these youngsters as my first act as interim manager or permanent manager or whatever. You know who's going to be annoyed by that is everybody else. And you're instantly creating a problem where you've called in a bunch of youngsters and you've made it clear, like, I don't really trust you guys anymore. You're probably already still embarrassed. You're still embarrassed from the Trinidad game, but I'm going to hand the U.S. national team over to young kids. Well, now if you're still the coach after that, maybe there's a little bit of hesitation. Maybe there's a little bit of ill feeling when those players do come back into camp. And I wonder almost if this is why Dave Sarachan is there, is because now...
Oh, he's like the fall guy to do that and then not have the blame
And then not have the blame. So they can play a bunch of youngsters. Things can look a little bit better. Then they can bring in a new manager who's like, yeah, we've already capped some of these guys. We're going to bring back some of the old guard. It's going to work out.
Okay, that's not a bad conspiracy theory. But I think the question is more about like what are the pros or cons of having a team full of youngsters.
And
right?
so to summarize, I think one of the cons would be that if you go a team full of youngsters, you're absolutely right that then they're not being challenged against more senior veterans. But it is also that you then annoy the senior veterans by not including them in the camp.
That's a con, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because Michael Bradley's 30 years old. He has plenty to give over the next few years. I don't care if he's too old when the 2022 World Cup comes around. We have to play a bunch of games in between now and then. We have to qualify for World Cup 2022. Got Copa America. We've got a couple of Gold Cups. Maybe a Confederations Cup. There are lots of games still to play. The focus on the World Cup worries me, the way people talk about this. I would also say, if you get a bunch of kids together, right, you get McKennie, Adams, Gonzalez, all the other teenagers that people want to see cut up because it makes you feel optimistic for the future, and then they get hammered into the ground by Portugal. That is not a good experience, I don't think. I don't think that builds confidence in those players in the future of the US men's national team.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. That
Tyler Adams called up, played right back, gets torched by Cristiano Ronaldo for 90 minutes. That's an experience that maybe he can learn from, but it's going to hurt his confidence.
And we know like very well that if a player has a very bad game, a historically bad game, that stands out. We all remember Timmy Chandler in Honduras. We remember Breck Shea when he looked like he didn't know how to play soccer briefly. And yeah, that absolutely sticks with you, especially if it's your first cap at the senior level. I also think a con to calling in just youngsters is Landon Donovan was telling a story recently about his first cap when he was still a teenager, very young. I can't remember how young. But it was this whole thing about like
he's played in the World Cup at 20, so he's got to be...
Yeah. I think he was like 18, maybe 17. I could be wrong. Oh, no, I guess not 17 because Christian Pulisic is the youngest. Anyway, he was called in and it was this whole like, oh my gosh, I'm going to represent my country. This is going to be amazing. Everybody in this locker room is going to be so like proud to represent the team. And he walks in and Roy Lasseter was complaining about getting his match day paycheck. And it sort of like shattered this illusion. And I do think that if you have a bunch of youngsters come in, they don't have that level, first of all, of like, this is like kind of an honor to be here. This is hallowed ground. We got to take it seriously. I got to take this opportunity. And you don't have that also level of like humility and sort of like that reality check at the same time. It is a bunch of youngsters coming in and like, hey, I'm top dog here. I was top dog with my team.
It's like calling up a U23 team, right? You're not really calling up a senior national team. Yeah.
And you're not then...
And it means less. It means less. Yeah. If you're like the 23rd guy on that roster and you know that they've only called up kids, you've got to be thinking... I wouldn't have made this if the senior players had also been mixed in with this. I'm trying to think of a good analogy of a thing that, like, the main thing is the thing you're excited about, but needs to be sort of something added to it to make it all work.
Well, while you think of that analogy, I'll say this, that, like...
Sterling Silver, 0.925 sterling silver is mixed with an alloy to make it more stable. I can't remember what the alloy is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and now I'm annoyed because I can't remember the metal. But I'll put it this way. Like, imagine, like, Andrew Carlton... For example, we don't think he's going to get called in, but say he did. Andrew Carlton is still not like really playing for Atlanta. Got 4 minutes this season, right? So he would still be, I would say, starstruck by some players. And you have to imagine that if Christian Pulisic is in that locker room, that whole team is like, whoa. Like, this guy's here. I want to be the next him.
Yeah.
I got to push myself. If he's not there, then you're sort of like, well, I am me. Well, I'm going to be the next me.
Pulisic's in a weird spot here because he's also still a teenager, so he'd still be very much part of the younger generation, and yet he's weirdly one of the most senior players.
Yeah. It's also, he's the one who's playing in the Champions League in front of a giant sold-out stadium and doing well at that. So, but if we were to answer his question fully then, are there pros to just calling in youngsters? Aside from you get a bunch of people a bunch of minutes?
At least it guarantees that the youngsters get called up, which is still what we want to see. I just want to see it done sensibly.
And I would also say that...
The pro would be if they beat Portugal and suddenly everyone's like, oh, we can beat Portugal with a midfield of teenagers.
Yeah. And so that would be good.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
it's
a long
likely.
shot. Yeah.
I would also say that like we've talked about this a bunch, that there's no FIFA competitive game for like 18 months for the United States.
Gold Cup. Yeah.
So then you don't have the opportunity to cap tie a lot of guys that we might otherwise have been able to. So then maybe this is at the very least could be an opportunity to say like, hey, Jonathan Gonzalez, we know you're dual national and eligible for Mexico, but look, you're going to get minutes at senior level. We're going to keep calling you in, and at least you're going to force him to have to file a one-time switch. He may already have to do that because he's played at youth. But I don't think he's played in a youth like senior competition or whatever.
Let's not even tempt it.
Yeah. So my point is simply that at least maybe some of those guys who could theoretically, possibly, maybe potentially be on the fence, maybe you just make them a little bit more inclined to play for the American side of the fence.
Yeah, you're right. You can't cap tie them, but if you start playing for a senior national team, you're kind of, I don't know what the word is, not cap tied, but commitment tied.
I'm also going to add that a fence is a bad metaphor for dual nationals this day and age.
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to say he could decide which bridge to be on.
Yeah.
Which side of the bridge. There we go.
Jonathan Gonzalez, I think, has talked pretty extensively.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people mention that he has said, I want to be part of the US program.
Yeah.
No matter what those websites we look at list him with a Mexican flag next to it.
Stupid Giuseppe Rossi. This is all his fault.
It is. It's made us all paranoid.
It has indeed.
Okay, thank you, Phil, for that question. Next question comes from Brian McIntyre. Brian wants to know, with the US national team not at the World Cup next summer, what are the compelling reasons to still watch the tournament?
I mean, aside from the fact that it's the World Cup, we said we're going to do more than that, right?
Yeah.
So, all right.
But that is the main one. Like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched it when England wasn't in it, 94.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would say two very compelling reasons at the start is that there's always one team that surprises, that kind of comes out of nowhere, and a lot of times leads other teams either at club level or national level to be like, ooh, that's a way to do things. So you think about Costa Rica, you think about Chile with that sort of aggressive sitting back but then pressing and causing problems, and I think that has been sort of reflected more in the broader game as a result. So you have teams that make that
So you're saying watch for the surprises, because there was a surprise player and a surprise team and all that kind of stuff.
And it goes the other way around because there are surprise train wrecks at every World Cup, and that's also fascinating to watch because you can try to figure out what has gone wrong. France in 2002, an obvious example. There was that time England struggled on the group stage. Just kidding, that happens a lot. And what was it? The Dutch who bombed out? No, Spain bombed out. Obviously, that was the big one. Yep. So there's always that one as well. That's sort of captivating to watch from a train wreck standpoint.
There's also the reason to watch is there is some of the highest quality, highest stakes soccer you'll ever see.
Yeah.
These are most of the best players in the world. Obviously, some will be missing because qualification is harsh sometimes. But you will see some incredible football played because it is a weird thing. Like the pressure rises, the stakes rise, and it brings the best and the worst out of all kinds of players. It's like playoffs writ much larger. And playoffs in 100-point font.
And I feel like the sort of cynical way that a lot of people approach the World Cup is like, it's not really the best soccer in the world because that's probably the Champions League where you've got the best players in the world training together week in and week out.
Yeah.
But I would argue the opposite, that I think that's what makes the World Cup a little bit more fun is because you have these world-class players, by definition, that maybe don't have as much training, so it is a little bit more like, you kind of got to take this game by the scruff of the neck, random guy, or we're going to try this random experimental tactic because we don't have center backs, or like whatever it might be, and you can kind of have a little bit more. There are more moments that could end up in a 7-1 drubbing, or it could be a really, really actually interesting 0-0 draw. Both of those are possible.
Actually, I like the World Cup because, as with any tournament, I think the Euros are the same. National teams don't often get a lot of time together, which is something you were just referencing, basically, right? So you don't have time to really have a tactical, detailed plan because you get called up, there's a few days, then there's a game. World Cups and other tournaments like that are a little different because there's so much focus building up to it, and you have like a month or so together beforehand.
Yep.
It's the most a national team is ever like a club team in terms of how long they spend together and how prepared they are.
Oh, I'm excited.
It's like everyone prepares for exams and goes to the World Cup, right? And then you see who's done the work correctly.
And I would say that with every exam, you always have that one student who gets the A+, and you're a little bit jealous of. And I do think that every tournament has one or two of those players that you remember for the tournament. That's what sticks. I mean, 98 for me is always going to be Zidane, even though he had some fairly interesting moments in that tournament. He got his first red card in a World Cup there.
Yeah.
But you just remember that player. You remember like Bebeto in 94. Or even kind of Baggio in 94, but you have those kind of iconic players and iconic moments, and that's another reason why the World Cup is like a unique entity in that regard.
Here's the other thing. If you're a soccer fan in the United States, I understand the US aren't there, but it's still in the way that like I'll watch speed skating at the Olympics. It's the one time other people will be paying attention to soccer.
Yeah.
So just enjoy, even though the US aren't there, It's to enjoy the moment of the world's focus being on soccer, even where soccer's not the number one sport. It kind of temporarily is just for a month.
Yeah, and I think with that, maybe with the United States not being there, it kind of maybe frees it up a little bit just to be like, I'm going to root for this team, or I'm going to find out more about that individual. And if maybe there were a podcast that were going to do like in-depth previews of every team at the World Cup to let you know about who you should be watching and why you should be watching and what they're going to do, maybe that would be beneficial as well.
I'd listen to that.
Would you?
Do you know any shows that would do that?
I think the Totally Football Show? No, they won't.
Or a show that sounds a bit like that.
Yeah, I think the Total Soccer Show might be doing that.
So yeah, lots of reasons to watch the World Cup. Not least a reason that Brian originally included in his email, which was it might be the last chance to see Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo at the peak or near peak of their powers.
I'm not ready to think about that.
But it's true, right? This might be last hurrah for those guys on the big world stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
If Argentina get there?
Argentina are there.
They are? Who's the playoff in South America?
Peru.
Peru.
Yeah, Peru.
There it is.
Yeah, Leo Messi's there.
It's Chile who
Leo Messi made sure they were there with that hat trick, remember?
There we
go. He's like, I am not missing a World Cup. Let's go.
Take that, Ecuador.
Okay, so thank you to Brian for that question. Final question. I have to read it, Tyler, because it's kind of addressed to you.
Sure.
From Ben Huber. Ben Huber says, per your great ad read, we did the great sneakers ad read, and Taylor not being totally comfortable wearing white shoes, at least originally.
Wearing them right now.
You've grown into them, right? But he said he used to wear white soccer cleats. Ben says, can you interpret anything about a player from his or her boot colour?
Okay, I really don't think you can anymore.
Anymore? Did you used to be able to?
I think so. I think, at amateur level, yes. Because it was either they were really, really good or thought they were really, really good.
If what? They had like flashy colours?
Yeah, if they were wearing like pink, because I really did used to be of the mindset of like, if you're wearing pink shoes, that stands out.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to be able to back that up. And if you can't, then you're going to stand out for the wrong reasons. But now every shoe is pink or hot green or magenta or whatever. Yeah, that it's going to be, maybe it's harder, like, to go the opposite direction and wear like all black shoes. Those are more difficult to find than say shoes with a bunch of color on them.
So it used to be, at least when I was growing up, and until maybe 10, 15 years ago, most cleats
I blame Ronaldo. Original
most cleats
Ronaldo.
were black, or black with some pattern on or like logo on or whatever.
Yep.
But then suddenly we started getting all kinds of colours, like bright orange. Like there's one now that looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. Cleats have gone a little crazy in terms of the patterns.
Yeah, and so I think with that, like if I go to look, if there is a pair of like matte all black shoes, I'm instantly obsessed with it. A bunch of Toronto players were wearing those. I think they were Puma, and I want them. I want them bad because that is more my style. But so I think then. And you were with me the one time where I was like thinking about maybe buying red shoes, and I just couldn't do it. It still feels weird to me. It's too flashy. That's not my style. But
maybe you can read it something super flash. I'm not sure what that would be at this point. Maybe gold cleats, right?
Yeah.
So someone's wearing gold. You're thinking either
Pogba.
This player's really, really good, or this player thinks they're really, really good.
Yep.
So you can interpret the one thing you will interpret or be able to interpret is that this player will not be playing short, simple passes like Michael Bradley in the New York-Toronto game.
This is true.
This guy or girl is going to try and rainbow me first touch.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is anything. I mean, I don't know if there is anything really that like can make you sort of be like, I don't know about that guy anymore, just because there is such a wide variety.
You can also tell, like, all right, if you're really trying to tell, you could look at a player you're playing against, and if their cleats look super new, you could be like, and it's halfway through the season, you could say, you maybe haven't played that much.
Yeah. Or you take too good of care of your shoes.
Yeah,
that's also a possibility. But to answer Ben's question a little bit more fully, part of it was that I played for a club growing up where you weren't allowed to wear anything that wasn't predominantly black.
Wow.
So when the opportunity came,
I weirdly love that. I don't know why.
Again, it was for the reasons we're talking about.
No flashness?
At the time, it was basically the idea was if you're wearing pink shoes, it means you're about the individual and not about the team. So it's more about like you shouldn't be trying to make yourself stand out by wearing flashy colors. You should make yourself stand out by playing better soccer. I don't know if I necessarily buy into that, especially nowadays. At the time, I certainly did.
Yeah.
But then when I was old enough to buy my own shoes, I was like, well, I'm wearing white shoes. I'm not going to get in trouble for
So
it.
you went the opposite to sort of be like, it's Taylor Rockwell 24/7.
I don't think you understand.
Dribbles ahoy.
Yes. I don't think you understand how close the director of coaching for my club was to Ron Swanson. Like, that line where he asks the kid...
Can we name the club, or is it...
It was FC Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think like Ron Swanson has the line when he's coaching kids basketball, like, do you not own a pair of scissors in your house, son? Because his hair is slightly too long. Like, we had a rule that you had to keep your hair out of your eyes, and if you didn't, if the director of coaching saw you like flicking your hair out repeatedly, you were getting a haircut.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
That is intense.
Yeah.
That is
intense. You had to pack your own bag when you were 10 years old if you forgot something, it was your fault.
Did he teach you proper spacing and positional awareness?
No, that wasn't important.
They maybe should have focused on that instead of...
Just swearing. Just swearing and yelling.
For the record, I feel like you got a good education at FC Richmond. You have happy memories of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you turned out a pretty good player.
Somewhat.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to Scott, Phil, Brian, and Ben for 4 excellent questions. I'm going to call them conversation starters because we kind of ended up on tangents on all of them, which I kind of enjoyed.
Once again, we're about to be over an hour on this show. So, well,
we did the survey, right?
Yep.
An hour and 15 is kind of like people are comfortable with that.
We can talk.
We can talk. If you would like to ask us a question, you go to totalsoccershow.com/questions. There's a form to fill out and it gets added to a gigantic spreadsheet where we have many, many questions that we can pull from. It's a great thing. We love doing it on the Total Soccer Show.
We do.
If you subscribe to the show at $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer 1 question a month. There's a little box you can check when you fill out the question that says I am a $10 a month subscriber, and we have to say those questions get extra attention. We make sure they get answered.
Indeed. We thought of everything. We spared no expense, much like John Hammond. Only this one won't lead to catastrophic destruction.
Who's John Hammond?
The owner of Jurassic Park.
Can we go 1 week without Jurassic Park?
No. We absolutely cannot. That should always be referenced at all times. So you mentioned the $10 and up at $5 and up.
How about you hold on to your butts?
See, there we go. You can only say that if you have a cigarette dangling precariously from your mouth. At any level, if you choose to support the show by subscribing, you are assigned a scout. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scouting reports to get to today, Daryl Grove.
You want me to go first?
I do.
First report is from John Fernandez. He is scouting Borja Mayoral, the 20-year-old Spanish striker for Real Madrid. Okay, I haven't read these. These are all going to be a surprise to me.
All right, prepare for pronunciation. There we go.
John says, Borja got the start in the Copa del Rey match against Segunda B, that's Spanish for third division side, Fuenlabrada, in the first leg of the round of 32. Madrid played an all-youngster 11, Nacho was the captain, and Mayoral got the full 90 minutes. Borja didn't score, but he is the 5th leading scorer in La Liga for Real Madrid after 10 games, tied with Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, and Marcelo. The bad news is he only has 1 goal. Not been a great start for Borja or for Madrid.
I'm going to say great start for Daryl Grove. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've ever heard you roll your R. I'm almost 100% sure.
So we were talking earlier about sort of not thinking about things and how that makes them easier. I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I think if I think about it, I roll too much or too little.
That's why I noticed, because I think you've never been able to do it because you always end up making weird noises because you're trying too hard.
That one just rolled off my tongue.
There we go. That's what they're supposed to do. Michael Heitman, I see what you did. Michael Heitman scouting Junior Flores. Sailing jokes were right over my head. 21-year-old American attacking midfielder for Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund U23 have played 4 league games since Flores returned from a hamstring injury. Unfortunately, he has not made a single game day roster. Michael speculates that this might be because Dortmund has been sending a few players to the U23 side for extra playing time, such as Julian Weigl, Juhu Park, and Jadon Sancho, so maybe they're forcing Flores out of the squad.
Oh dear, Jadon Sancho. I mean, I'm happy to see Jadon Sancho getting more minutes for a Borussia Dortmund team, but if it's knocking Junior Flores further down the order, that's a problem.
Not ideal.
Brendan Massa is scouting.
Speaking of not ideal,
Marlon Fossey. Weren't we talking about Fossey yesterday about being a potential call-up for that roster? The 18-year-old American right-back for Fulham.
I love you, Daryl Grove.
Quote, following up on my previous report, Fossey won't be fit for a potential call-up for the US's friendly against Portugal. Fossey messaged me on Instagram to tell me his groin injury had a setback a few weeks ago and he is still not in training, unquote. Top-level scouting, Brendan.
I feel like that's how you know the player is definitely injured, when they're taking time to update their Instagram. Right. It means probably they aren't spending much time on the training.
Yeah, he's got an ice bath going on.
A little bit, yeah, exactly. Colin Bish scouting Eric Williamson, 20-year-old American midfielder for Maryland.
Speaking of US under-20s.
Yep. The regular season for college soccer came to a close this weekend, and Williamson's Maryland lost to Michigan in the game that could have seen them as Big Ten champions. Williamson finished the season with 6 goals and 5 assists, and did a decent job of holding down the right side of the field in whatever position the team needed.
If you don't remember Williamson, he scored that goal from distance in the CONCACAF Championship for the US under-20s. He is a potential DC United homegrown player if they take the option and he decides to go pro.
And they probably will, I think.
It would be good timing for Williamson to do it next year, right? Straight into the Buzzard Point Stadium.
Yeah, I also don't know if Maryland qualified for the College Cup, I think it's still called, but like the equivalent, the soccer equivalent of March Madness.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, we'll find out. Kyle McElhinney is scouting Renato Sanchez, the 20-year-old Portuguese midfielder, on loan at Swansea City from Bayern Munich. Kyle says the recent unpleasantness could also apply to Renato Sanchez's start to the Premier League season. He's only made 5 appearances for a total of 300 minutes without an assist or a goal. He's been battling a thigh injury throughout the season and remains out for at least the next couple of games. While Sanchez was called into the World Cup qualifying squad, he failed to see the field. This is getting off track, isn't it?
It is. It's very surprising because we talked about this before, that part of the reason why this sort of surprise move happened is because Paul Clement is the head coach or manager, of Swansea City, has that connection to Bayern Munich. So that you have to believe Bayern Munich looked at that and thought, oh, this is a guy who'll be able to develop him, get the best out of him, because that certainly wasn't happening when he was at Bayern. Now it seems like maybe it's not happening in the Premier League either.
But it's just ever since he took, I can't remember his Portuguese club, but ever since he moved, it's never landed right for him.
It is not.
Oy.
There's still time.
He does have that Euro 2016 winners medal, so there's that.
And also he's 20.
Yeah. Who else we got, Taylor?
Final report comes from Michael Lazar scouting Jordan Morris, 22-year-old American attacker for Seattle. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but you might have.
Big dog fan.
That's the one. While Morris continues to remain sidelined for the Sounders, his social media game remains on point, says Michael. Following a bet with teammate Christian Roldan about which Sounders alma mater would win a Pac-12 conference showdown a couple of weeks ago, Morris fulfilled his bet by painting Roldan's car in cardinal red to celebrate the win. While it is unlikely that Morris will return for the return leg of their playoff series versus Vancouver, the layoff for the international break could provide enough time for Morris to recuperate and return in the conference finals should Seattle find a way to advance past their Cascadia rivals.
I didn't know it was even a chance that Morris could be back for the playoffs.
Nor did I.
That is news to me.
Yes.
All right, that could be exciting.
News to me, too. We'll see what happens.
Well, thank you to
At least
John.
Christian Roldan has a terribly colored car now.
Thank you to John. Not a Stanford fan over there?
Well, it's more so if Jordan Morris is painting it, like, unless he paid for it to be painted, which would be fine, then I'm wondering, like, was it spray paint? Like, what was happening there?
He has got that sweet, the first ever big money homegrown player contract.
That could be. I'm going to guess it was probably, like, wash-off paint that he had to, like, drive around for one day.
Fair,
yeah, so that's what I mean when I say it can't have been that good of a paint job.
Well, thank you to John, Michael, Brendan, Colin, Kyle, and Michael for all of today's scouting reports. Again, if you'd like to join the Scouting Network, you go to totalsoccershow.com/join. You will see all the various options at which you can support the show. Like we said earlier, $10 a month guarantees we answer one question per month. There's also an option to click No Scout or Silent Scout. That's what it is. So you join the Scouting Network, you support the show so we can keep doing what we're doing. But if you don't want to scout a player, select Silent Scout. We won't ask you to do anything. We'll just take your money.
Well said.
It's a good deal.
And I will add that there isn't, sometimes there are lulls in a player's career or in a player's season, and there isn't always much to report. That said, I think 4 of those 6 reports we just read were sort of not much to report, but here's an interesting thing that's happening, or here's an interesting way of reporting it, or here's why that might be happening.
Yeah,
so that is
people,
always
right?
welcome.
We've still got stuff going on, like weird bets where you paint cars.
And I like conspiracy theories. So, maybe one of them was involved in faking the moon landing. Who knows? I do not believe that we faked the moon landing. Quick clarification before I get a bunch of tweets.
Taylor Rockwell, on that note, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Aliens are real. Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back later this week with more Total Soccer Show. We're going to review the Champions League. It'll probably be Wednesday, I think we'll do Champions League, big review, thumbs up, thumbs down of all the action. We'll talk to you then.
Wednesday evening, I believe?
Yes, Wednesday evening. We'll be back.